You're listening to Being Built. I'm Aaron Davis, the host and the founder of Reliant Search Group. Here with Britta August. You are the operations manager for Bering Straits Native Corporation.
Correct.
And a customer of mine.
Yes.
I know your role in that organization well because you guys trusted us with your business this year. Was that this year? Feels so long ago now. But it wasn't that long ago.
Mm-hmm.
How's your guy doing? How's Brody doing?
Oh, he's fantastic.
Is he? Good.
Absolutely.
Good. How long have you been there now?
With the company, about 5 years.
Honeymoon's over, huh?
Oh, for sure. I really enjoy the company, though. It's a good company to work for.
So you kind of climbed the ladder there a little bit. You didn't come in this role.
I definitely did, yes. Quite a bit faster than I expected.
You came in as a program manager or project manager?
I came in as a Scrum Master.
Scrum Master, okay.
And I had been a manager before that and then just was a little bit burnout with managing. The people side of things can really wear on you at times. So I was glad to step back to a Scrum Master role because I had been one in the past. And then someone stepped out that had been the Agile coach, and I had wanted to become an Agile coach, and I definitely had the qualifications. So they promoted me into that pretty quickly. Okay. So I want to say within about 11 months. And then I spent a couple of years doing that. Then I was promoted to program manager over my own project, and I was still doing the Agile coaching, and then recently promoted to operations manager this year.
Now you got a few dozen people.
It's a lot. Never thought I'd have that many employees.
So much for getting out of management,
huh? Yeah.
The name Bering Straits Native Corporation is always intriguing to me because it's like very, very, rote as far as what the organization's native owned and all that stuff. What's your experience been working for a Native Alaskan owned firm or?
A mission-driven organization has always been important to me. So I was really excited to join the organization because of that. Their mission is to better the lives of the Native Alaskan people that they serve. And that's very evident in everything they do. They're very passionate about the mission and finding shareholders and getting them employed within the organization is a big effort that they have as well. So we get to see some people that might not have the kind of opportunities that we can provide come in and grow and shape their lives through it. So it's exciting.
Not even sure I was completely clear how they went about fulfilling that mission, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
How much of the workforce of the firm is in Alaska versus, here in the Midwest?
Well, if you look at all of the book of business of the entire company and all their subsidiaries, it's global, right? We have contracts in many different areas. Yeah.
It's not just two places.
Yes, definitely not.
A couple of different times in your life, you got pulled into leadership. Maybe this last time when you weren't even really looking for it.
I definitely wasn't.
So why does that happen to you?
Well, when it happened, I had to sit back and say, why did this happen? Because I as you mentioned, I wasn't looking for it.
Mm-hmm.
I looked back, and as I'm growing other people, I realized that my leader had been growing me the whole time. So he had been putting things in front of me to, I think, sort of as a test. And this is, of course, my impression about what was going on.
Okay.
So I never really asked him that, but
okay.
I got the impression that that's what he was doing. He was very calculated and strategic about how he was making sure that he had some people to bring into new roles as the organization was growing rapidly, and he needed some people that would be able to come in and take this new role on.
What were the signs that was happening?
Well, he has pulled me into things like the entire time that I've been there.
Okay.
So being invited to leadership meetings, even when I wasn't technically in that role, when I was the Agile coach, I wasn't over a program, and every other person in the room was over a program. I see. And my advice was being sought, my expertise and input, and it was natural to me. I think so. That was potentially something he saw. I think I've always been a leader. I don't know why, but I don't think that leadership is something that I'm
Britta, we're going to figure that out
towards.
during this episode.
Okay, great.
Figure out why. That's the good stuff I'm going to get out of you. It's
definitely in me, though. I mean, it's in there deep. I can't explain it.
Why do you think it is? You don't have to explain it all perfectly.
Why do I think it is?
Why do you think you've always been a leader?
I'm always
when you think back, like how far back can you recall leading people?
like one
Yeah, like is it your
from
earliest
birth.
memories?
Oh yeah, earliest memories for sure. I will take opportunities to put myself in front of people. I'm not afraid to speak in front of people. Well, I'm afraid to speak in front of people, certainly get nervous, but I'm not afraid to get up and draw things out of people, create synergy, create collaboration. I like people. I've always liked people. And I'm always looking for ways to make everyone's lives easier.
Did you have a leader, maybe a parent or teacher or somebody else early in your life that you think encouraged or empowered that behavior?
Actually, I think it's the opposite.
Maybe a vacuum of it that you were filling?
A little bit, yeah. Without going into gory details of my childhood.
Mm-hmm.
I was left alone a lot. So not abandoned, but just I was left to kind of my own devices to figure things out.
Sure.
And I just went out and found my way.
That was the 80s, wasn't it?
It was. It was.
It's like, be home by 5. When the street lights come on, make sure you're inside. Or my mom would whistle. She had a really loud whistle. And so wherever I was in the neighborhood, I could hear it.
My mom had a triangle.
A triangle?
On the front porch, and she would go out and ring it.
Okay, wow.
And then
like
we'd come back.
Yeah, my mom would do the 2 fingers, and then we could be blocks away, but we would hear it come call. But for those hours in the meantime, yeah, we were out doing whatever.
Yeah. Can I give you an example of figuring things out for myself?
Please.
So with college, my parents gave me no guidance, hardly at all. And I decided to go to a women's college because I decided I wanted to study undistracted by the opposite sex.
Okay.
And it didn't last. Not because of the lack of distraction, but I got interested in Russian language and literature when I was at that college. And then I decided that I wanted to study in Russia. So I found a program with Ohio State University, which is what brought me to Ohio, and applied and was accepted and went to Moscow for a year. So
wow.
So that was just the kinds of things that I've done in my life. If I decide I want to do something, I just kind of figure out a way.
How do you think that shaped you?
Oh, that was incredibly shaping.
I've never been to anywhere near there.
That was an incredible experience. It was scary. It was terrifying. When I first got there, I couldn't count to 20. My Russian skills were very poor. My instructor at my teacher in my first 2 years of college was a terrible alcoholic and gave us a take-home language exam. So, which I don't think really should be a thing. However, when you're in a country and you don't speak the language, you sink or swim.
True. You figure out the things that are critical, right?
Yep.
You know, what's interesting is I think back to a CEO you and I both worked for. And one thing I always admired about her was in the Army, we called it front loading, where you just give somebody more than they can possibly carry. And it makes them tend to lean forward, right? So when they're holding something in front of them, they're going to run faster. And you'll drop things. But if you're good at picking the things you should hold tightest or hold closest, right?
You start to learn what you can
get whatever
drop.
you can hold fast, right? You'll get to wherever you need to be with whatever you can hold fast. But that's
poignant.
Yeah, there's a little bit of a magic to intentionally expecting way too much, and it forces a prioritization, forces people to choose what. It also creates a tremendous amount of stress and a lack of satisfaction in your work, but it comes with risks. But it's great at creating decision makers, prioritizers. And anyway, you mentioned sink or swim with the language. That's what I think of. Like, do you need to know how to say 19, or do you need to know how to say, bathroom? Right.
What I learned is I needed to say, stay away from me when a stranger would follow me.
Wow.
So
interesting.
Yeah.
No wonder it was scary.
And when to be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
When to be surrounded by safe people.
Okay. Interesting.
Which is actually translatable to leadership as well. Yeah. You need to be surrounded by good people.
I was just talking to somebody the other day who I've not officially, but mentored in ways. We've had a few coaching conversations, and I was just telling him how, leaders are essentially people who have collected a number of resources that can accomplish things for them, whether it's a team or a person or a vendor or a whatever piece of software, whatever. They've got a collection of resources. They've figured out who they can trust with the critical things they need in order to do the thing that they're good at. But they don't really do any of those things. They just know who to go to for all of those things, like knowing what safe people to be around in what context, right?
Right.
So Moscow, you spent a year there. That's a big city too, right?
Yep. I went into Russia and I went into the Soviet Union and I left Russia.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So did you feel that as a resident there? Like, did you feel that change happening?
No, I don't think that. I think the change had kind of already happened before I got there, because standing up on the tank and
that was
starting to break it apart was
Mm-hmm.
actually what interested in me in the country's situation.
You keep up with the news in Russia now? Do you have an opinion on the war there? Or?
I have a very good Ukrainian friend.
Oh, do you?
So yes, I have an opinion on the war there. And I have, what I saw there was crime.
When you lived in Moscow?
Yeah, crime ruled the country.
Really?
And still
At the
does
highest
today.
level?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I watched the mafia in action. I watched someone he was probably murdered, but he was being beaten very badly in the middle of the street. Yeah. Came down to the subway, saw a big pool of blood one day.
Wow, that's
so
traumatic.
There was some real interesting situations that made you really appreciate what we have in the United States.
Mm.
I feel it's a real shame that more people don't travel to countries that are less fortunate than we are in.
Why do you think that is, Britta? You just described finding a body in a pool of blood. Right. We don't, because it's nice and safe here. Right?
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
I know what to expect here in the burbs. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
I don't see a lot of bodies out here, but
I remember when I came back, my dad picked me up at JFK, and in Moscow, you didn't hold foreign currency out in public. You didn't let it be. If you had it on you, you didn't let anyone know. So he was holding a $5 bill out the car window to hand to the parking attendant, and I lost it.
Yeah.
I was so freaked out because I thought we were going to get mugged.
It makes you a target, right?
It did. Yeah. So you watch your back whenever you can.
So that was obviously a shaping experience, huh? That was college age. Mm-hmm. How'd you get your start work-wise? What'd you get into out of college?
Well, I really didn't know what I wanted to do with Russian, so it immediately got put on a shelf.
Okay.
I started as a receptionist at a small computer reseller.
Okay.
And I was also doing landscaping. I was also bartending. So I had like
everything.
3 jobs at the same time, and just a little of everything, just trying to find where do I want to go in this world. Mm-hmm. And I ended up sitting at that front desk, learning about the software that was on my computer, and I started like changing it.
Okay.
And they came and asked me what I was doing, and I'm like, well, this doesn't work. I'm just fixing it.
Okay.
So I was coding and I didn't even know it.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so they promoted me up into inside sales.
Okay.
And then one of my customers, I found out, Ohio State University, had an opening in their IT department in the College of Medicine. So then I moved into an actual IT position and started doing all the back end laptop imaging, troubleshooting, and learned a lot.
You know, it's funny. I've had a lot of people in that chair now. And whenever I talk to the folks who end up working in IT about how they got into IT, I'd say about half. And I'm kind of reflecting on the people we interview too, you know, candidates and customers and stuff that we talk to about their careers. I'd say probably half of the information technology professionals, when you talk to them about their start, it was kind of random. It was incidental. Bumped into so-and-so and doing such and such, whatever, right? You know, it's because interestingly, technology is one of those things that it's a tool set. You know, like finance is kind of, everything is, but technology is, you know, it's a department of tools.
Yeah.
Right. And so like you need them to do all the other things. Right.
Right.
So
Well,
you were
remember-
using software to run a desk, right? Or to run an administer a sales office or whatever. Right.
Right.
It's funny how many people that are running IT now got into it just calibrating a tool that they needed to do whatever it was.
You remember I said I like to make people's lives easier.
Mm-hmm.
That's what IT is all about.
Yeah.
That's what it's for.
Systems in an organization. It's the only department really that's like uniquely focused on providing a set of tools for everybody in the business to do other things.
Right. People forget that though.
HR, it's people. Finance, it's budgeting decisions. It's about decision making, right?
Yeah.
Compliance, it's about, legal, all these things. Even I guess engineering. That's usually product. Anyway, it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
So you started in IT because you worked at the front desk of a company that was selling computers.
Yep.
And then hopscotched into that. That's cool. So you're a long way from being an administrative assistant at a computer sales organization. You've spent the last 5 years in the defense world. Mm-hmm. That was new to you 5 years ago, right?
Yes.
How are you feeling about that?
I love it. Yeah.
What do you like about it?
Well, I love this country.
Yeah, you kind of got multiple like purposes or whatever.
Yeah.
Mission driven.
I really love this country, and I'm very grateful to everything that we have here. So to be a part of the defense of it is huge for me, and also a lot of military family members. So those folks, honoring their memories and being a part of it is very poignant to me. So, but also the environment, it's there's never a dull moment. Some days it can be boring, like you would not believe, particularly when you're more on an individual contributor type of a role. Mm-hmm. But when you start to get up into leadership, there's never a dull moment. There's always interesting personalities, interesting rules that you have to abide by, and you have to figure out how to be effective within the rule set, right? Mm-hmm. So I've always tried to approach difficult situations with, you don't always have to be right, but it's more important to be effective. So people struggle with the thought of agile in a DoD environment. How do you make that fit, right? And it's all about meeting people where they are. So if one day there's something that they say, I can't move past this point, we have to follow this particular rule set, then okay, well let's figure out what's in this rule set that's really going to move the organization forward to be able to deliver what it is that you need to do. And so if you look at it from that perspective, then all of a sudden all kinds of possibilities open up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've often, I guess, grappled with that question myself, like how you would take such an enormous bureaucracy. I mean, when you think of a bureaucracy, is there anything that describes more than acquisition and
Government,
execution of defense projects, whatever? No,
yeah.
that's probably what the word was invented for, right?
Absolutely.
So I suspect in the defense contractor world, we do bureaucracy better than anybody else. And trying to introduce this like agility to it, you look away for a second, next thing you know, it's a safe agile framework and it's a behemoth, thing or whatever, right?
Oh yeah. So, all of a sudden
I'm like,
it's
wait
running
a minute.
you over.
That little agile decision-making thing is this, we've made a bureaucracy out of agility or whatever.
Mm-hmm. I've definitely seen that happen.
Yeah. But there's, there's a reason you have to marry those things together in certain contexts or whatever.
Yeah.
There's a reason that acquisitions in the defense world are cumbersome. We want them competitive, and we want, a very transparent process, that kind of thing, right? Mm-hmm. That's a big task you all are undertaking. Mm-hmm. I say you all, I'm thinking of like, I've heard generals speak on it and everything else. I know that's a big challenge. Otherwise, I mean, if we don't move fast, if we can't be nimble, decisive, and, literally agile, and everything takes 18 years to put out, we're in trouble.
Yes, we are.
We got to be able to move a little bit faster than that.
And the great thing is the leaders know that.
Yeah.
Coaching in that kind of an environment can be more effective if you use the right words.
Are you glad you started in software development in the commercial world first?
Yeah, I think I am, because I believe if I'd started in the Department of Defense, I would have become more rigid. It's very easy to become complacent. With that kind of bureaucracy, it's overwhelming at times, and it feels very blocking, right? Everywhere you turn, there's some kind of bureaucracy that you've got to handle and try to make a step forward and someone says, we can't do that because of these 50 million reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad I have the tenacity to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that came from being in a different environment.
Where you could see things through in a quick manner.
There's definitely times, though, where I have to talk myself off the ledge and not get discouraged by that bureaucracy and not let myself get complacent. I have to make sure that I stay very aware of that mindset and intentionally choose to walk away from it.
That makes sense. So it doesn't deflate you, right?
Doesn't deflate you and doesn't turn me into something that I'm not.
Yeah. You don't want to be cynical, right? And that's what bureaucracy
I don't want to be
does.
cynical. And I really don't want to be complacent. Everyone has moments of cynicism and complacency too, I'm sure. But I don't want to become someone who's always cynical and complacent.
You've always been a leader, but somebody was developing you as a leader. And so I like that those two things came out of your face when we were talking about how you became a leader, because they're often referenced as conflicting ideas. How do you reconcile those?
Wait, tell me again which two ideas you're talking about.
Somebody that you worked for, a leader that you were supporting, was investing in you and developing you as a leader. And yet you can recall feeling like a leader in your earliest memories. So I often hear people saying, leaders are born, not made. And other people will say, no, you have to develop leaders. And those are kind of conflicting schools of thought when it comes to where the best leaders come from. And I'm curious, since I've heard you reference both of those as important sources of leadership competency for you, how do you reconcile those two things?
Was I born or was I grown?
Yeah.
Nature versus nurture
Yeah.
of leadership?
Yeah. Which
That's
one
a
are
great.
you, Britta?
I'm both. I'm definitely both. Now, I think the born leader is true. One of the things that I've studied in my life is strength finders.
Okay.
Or strengths finders with an S.
Right.
And I loved the concept that people are good at something. They're really good at it and it's innate in their nature. And don't try to get better at your worst weaknesses, because what a waste of time. Try to capitalize on your strengths.
Okay.
So whatever those strengths might be, and there might be leadership within those strengths, right? So maybe there's an element of leadership to everyone, but what kind of leadership is it? Maybe you're just leading yourself. Maybe you're leading your family. Most
humans end up becoming parents. And as a parent, you certainly have to lead somebody, right? So
toughest job ever.
Right? Nobody prepares for that, right? There's no class.
No.
Hopefully, if you're lucky, you had good influences that helped you learn how to do some things.
Or you have really hard times that teach you.
Yeah. But whether you want it or not, most humans end up with some responsibility as a leader.
Yeah.
Some measure of it, right? But can you lead dozens of people or hundreds of people to do very complex things for a very kind of nuanced and competitive business objective is another story altogether.
Yeah. So you have to grow within that leadership. Can you grow to that level? Do you want to grow to that level? It might be that you want to grow just because you want to make more money. I see that all the time where people want to get promoted, but I always ask them why.
Yep.
I think that's one of the reasons that I have been promoted, because I really don't want to be.
we hire a lot of engineers and technologists as a common kind of request from our customers. And in that population in particular, people go into that work because of the problem solving nature of it. So those first two levels of leadership, that, maybe team lead, manager, or director, or whatever, those kind of early stage leaders where you're managing a dozen people or a couple dozen, a couple small teams or whatever, they're very administrative in nature, right? It's a lot of like day off approval and, meeting with the customer to clarify this or that or whatever, right? There's a lot of that like administrative stuff that's not very problem solving, right? It's not, now you get a lot less engineering, the nature of your work. So it's unfortunate how often I see people go into management leadership and then want out. It's very common for me to hear at a manager level in particular, I just want to get back into writing code, or I want to get back into engineering. And they don't have any ambition to become directors and VPs and that kind of thing. It's good to be self-aware in that respect, but it's a completely different body of work.
It is.
Yeah. And the same is
is
true in sales too. There are a lot of very effective salespeople that go on to be sales leaders that are horrible, and they can't meet quota across a team, and they were crushing quota, top producers or whatever as an individual contributor, because it's a different set of competencies. And I would argue that it's a skilled set of competencies that you actually do develop and learn to do well, right?
I would agree.
So you received some, preemptive, I guess, investment into you as a leader. Have you done that?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, frequently. I try to do that as much as I can.
So when you look at somebody and you think, okay, I could see them becoming a leader, or you say, they just need X, Y, and Z,
right?
To be a good leader. What is that? Those characteristics, that secret sauce that you think is maybe the hardest thing that leaders have to either be good at naturally or learn. What are those most critical couple of things you think that contribute to people being good leaders?
Fearless nature of going forward is really important. So if you have a problem in front of you, it's very easy to get into a churn on what's the right thing to do. And a lot of times you don't have enough time to fully evaluate. So you've got to have those resources like you talked about. You've got to have people that you trust to be able to help you evaluate quickly. And at some point, you've got to be confident enough to make a decision and move forward.
So some tolerance for risk?
Yes, exactly. That I almost use those terms.
Okay.
So risk tolerance, you've got to be comfortable being uncomfortable. And I think that's definitely been a success factor for me, because I'm not afraid to fail. You will fail. You're never going to be successful 100% of the time, but you learn from your failures. So if you learn well, then you can take something from that. If you don't sit back and look at what happened and why you failed, then you take less from it. So you have to take that time as well.
That's a great one. And I think that's one that's not acknowledged often enough, particularly in the context of leadership, because we tend to promote people who've not messed things up.
Well, they're good at what they've done, so that's why they get promoted.
Yeah.
And then they're put into a different skill set, and then they have to learn how to be good at the new skill set.
That's right. Or people who were right. We tend to promote those folks.
Right.
As opposed to people who were willing to put it on the line and assert a position.
And that's why I said earlier, it's more important to be effective than it is to be right. You can't let your ego get in the way. If you are, there's only so far you're going to get, unless you're so pushy that you get there anyway. That's definitely not the kind of leader I am.
As you think about the next thing, risk tolerance is a good one. Let's think about the next one. I'm going to ask the same question in a different way. And maybe this will provoke a different thought.
I've already thought of the next one.
Oh, you're already there?
Yeah.
Well, hit me with it.
Well, I've been growing a couple people recently, and I gave them some feedback. I said, you've got to step out of the mindset of sitting back, and you've got to step forward into that leadership position. So understanding what the needs of the other people that you're working with are comes from listening and then being able to react to that. So there's a lot of I don't know the right words for it. There's a lot of problem solving in people that has to happen. So understanding if someone is asking you a question, what do you know about that person that really tells you what they really mean by that question? And are you brave enough to ask them more questions? Or is the relationship good enough to ask more questions? You might need to develop the relationship to be able to honestly dig in a little bit further so you're getting to the right solution. If you don't understand the problem well enough because you haven't listened well enough, or your relationship isn't good, or you've made assumptions, then you won't offer the right solution.
Makes sense.
And that helps shape paths, shapes different opportunities. There might be more than one path.
As you were explaining that, I was thinking, well, how do you identify that in somebody, a new hire that you don't have a relationship with, right?
There's definitely a leap of faith at times that you have to take. The way I interview is very casual. And some people might, I imagine anyway, some people might sit back and say, wow, she's really unprofessional. But my goal when I'm interviewing someone is to really get to know who they are. I don't want you to tell me what.
Come out of the gate and say, how many children do you have? How old are you?
Yeah,
as long as you're not breaking the law,
I might not do that. But
Okay.
but I do. But I ask them questions about, what's important to you in your life. Why do you want this job? What would satisfy your desire to do something by doing this job? And try to really draw that out of them. And you can, a lot of people get nervous when they interview. So how can I make them feel comfortable so that they can answer the question as honestly as possible? And if I'm asking them about a skill set, a specific skill set, I literally say, I really want to know how deep your skill set is because I know what I need your depth to be. And if we're honest with each other, then you'll feel like you're in a good fit if we accept you. And I'll feel like you're in a good fit. It needs to be a mutual relationship.
I've said this before 100 times, but you provoked a thought that I think I've said it so often, I think because it's underappreciated when you're hiring, particularly the most impactful people. So it might be a senior leader or subject matter expert if you're like in a product business or something. But and you alluded to it, you pointed it out and it's about making people feel comfortable, to be completely honest. I don't think there's a single thing that's more important in an interview. And I think
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think the most effective way to make people feel comfortable being completely themselves is for them to not need it too much. Anytime you have an imbalance in power or dependency, you have one party who's like really like, oh, I hate my boss so much. I can't with their count. They've only done a preliminary phone screen and they're already counting down to when they can get away from this job they can't stand. So they need it too much, right? Or you've got somebody who's 6 months unemployed and they're talking themselves into conceding on things they really don't want. And so you're talking with them and they need it too much, right? It's really hard sometimes to interview somebody effectively because you're really trying to get to know them and they're really trying to get a job.
Right.
So I feel like the single most effective way at mitigating the risk of bad connections is to, as much as possible, hire people that don't need that job that much.
That's really interesting. You might have just changed my hiring practice entirely.
That's not that different from the last one we did.
That is very true. And boy, was that effective.
Yeah. You just get people that are, if they're almost indifferent, they're interested, right? There has to be something compelling. There has to be some new challenge or improvement to their work, context or compensation or title or influence, whatever. There has to be something that's better about it. But if it's so much better than what they're dealing with right now, if they need it so much, they're going to sell you. They're going to be selling you, right?
Right.
And then it comes down to how sincere do they want to be versus how much do they want the job.
Absolutely.
And people will lie most effectively when they first completely lied to themselves. So they're really good at it.
And you know how I feel about lying.
Yeah. I mean, no, I don't know. I'm assuming you don't like it. You're not for it.
Not for it. Yeah.
Yeah. When you've lied to yourself,
It's a big sticking point with me. I
Yeah.
try to make it a point not to lie, even about very tiny things. So
I think the worst liars, the most dangerous liars are the ones who believe it.
Oh, for sure.
And job hunters can believe it as they're saying it sometimes.
I can see that.
That's what need does to you, I think. Anyway.
And I've caught people in lies in interviews.
Yeah.
Even in the application.
Yeah.
I was just looking at an application online earlier today where someone declared themselves a shareholder. shareholder of Bering Straits Native Corporation means you're an Alaska
Gives you a
Native.
preference. Okay.
You're Alaska Native, right? Well, perhaps you can be a shareholder and not be an Alaskan Native, but this person was from Cameroon.
Okay.
So I was fairly certain that was not the truth.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always hard to know too when you're dealing with somebody putting something in a form. Like, what was their what were they thinking? What assumption were they making? Was it anyway? Who knows? But yeah, people lie to themselves
But
first.
that wanting it too much is a logical explanation.
Yeah, sure is. All right, I'm not going to let you get off the hook. You had a third thing loaded, so we were talking about.
I did have a third thing loaded.
Well, don't go to it yet. I'm going to I'm going to ask you the question in a different way.
All right.
And maybe it'll provoke that third.
Okay.
Just
Bring it
on.
on.
I've been playing with this question. I think it's a fun one.
Okay.
So the show's called Being Built because we talk about how you are built as a leader as you're going about building products and teams and such. And so we want this to be introspective. And I run a executive search practice where we're very focused on hiring high impact people into difficult to fill roles. So I'm curious about the kind of the segue between those two themes. And one question that comes to mind is, if you were to replace yourself, you won the lottery, you took a promotion, you moved out of state, whatever, and it was your last mandate to spend the next couple of months identifying, filtering, and hiring somebody to step into your role, what would be the most important characteristics you'd be looking for? And part two, how would you confirm them?
I'm not sure I like you anymore, Aaron.
That's a hard one, right?
That is a hard one. Wow.
What do you think about it? We got 20 minutes.
20 minutes to answer that question. Thank goodness.
Would it take that long?
It might take me that long. What would it take? What would I look for in hiring my own backfill?
Yeah. I mean, what do you have? A couple dozen? How big is the team you oversee?
Probably about 150.
Good sized team. It's a lot of responsibility.
Well, when you move to this level, you have leaders underneath you, right?
Yep. So that's not a small thing. What would be important to you think, in putting the right person into your seat?
Being comfortable in the gray space. That a lot of things have many possibilities, so don't get stuck on having to go only one direction. You have to be able to navigate when something doesn't seem to be working, or something's suddenly come up that isn't working. Pivot, change.
It's not a template for everything, huh?
No, there's not a template for almost anything. Tenacity, for sure. The ability to stay positive in difficult circumstances when things are frustrating you. You mentioned bureaucracy. That's always frustrating.
Sure.
And that's in any organization. So how can you not let the bureaucracy of life overwhelm you and become discouraging? What kind of network do you have? How do you build that network? How do you build rapport with people and be real with people?
That's good.
I'd want somebody that wants to grow other people too. That's been a passion of mine. I want to see people that work for me, no matter whether they're growing into leadership or just growing in their role. Those little moments fill my bucket, right? I enjoy helping someone to discover something about themselves, no matter what it is.
Is there a consistent warning sign that irks you, that you see when you're...
Well, lying. I mentioned lying.
Yeah.
Lying is a big one.
Yeah, I think lying would turn off most people. I'm curious if there's
warning signs.
Yeah, things that you pick up when you're...
Lack of emotional intelligence.
Okay. How do you discern that?
What someone's focus is.
So following somebody's train of thought.
Yeah.
They blow past some critical variable that you thought was important.
Right.
The sensitivity to the human side of something.
Yeah, certainly the human side. So I mentioned emotional intelligence, but intelligence in general, there's a lot of thinking that's needed in leadership. And you've got to be able to think fast. So some people can't think quickly. That might be my own personality coming out, though, because I think very fast. And when I'm in a room having a conversation about something, usually I'm in my mind about 3 or 4 steps at least ahead of most people in the room. Now, of course, I've met people that are ahead of me.
Yeah.
And I'm always mad because I want to be the one that's ahead.
You know what I've learned
That's
about
an ego thing. There you go.
I've learned about myself recently that I wish was better is that I don't think fast. I've realized recently that I know a good amount of things, and those things I can recall quickly and reference quickly. Those familiar things you use all the time. I will often run into a situation where something about the problem that's being solved or the decision that's being made or whatever feels off. So I have like a spidey sense, and then I have an aha moment 3 days later. Maybe it's not 3 days, it might be 3 hours later, right?
Right.
But I often run into situations where I've got something critical to contribute to it. Like I see a different perspective or an important improvement to an approach to something, but I don't see it in the moment. And so I'll be in the moment negotiation with folks. And then hours later, I'm like, that's what it was. I have to get back into the conversation to take it to the next level.
That's why I say it's about me, because there are many people that don't think in that way.
Mm-hmm. I definitely don't have my best thinking in the moment. My best thinking, I think I bring 75%, 80% of my thinking in a given moment. And then the other 20% is probably the part that matters most. The one that takes it to that next level comes a minute later.
Are you an introvert?
No, but
Would
you know what?
Describe yourself as an introvert?
No, I've always kind of been pretty extroverted. I'm energized by a party, like meeting new people, that kind of thing.
Right.
But I have become more introverted the older I get. So I
can relate to that.
I'm somewhere in the middle now, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm kind of balanced. Anyway, but I still make friends for a living. So,
Maybe I'm in the wrong job.
I just do it slowly and more,
yeah, I have to slow myself down.
Yeah. It's interesting. I've always been jealous of people who just like have all of their processing can happen in a moment. Mine seems to get muddied up at the end, and I have to kind of let it, I think about a washing machine or whatever, that spin cycle just seems like it takes another hour. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that is actual.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we talk about your business? Is that a maybe?
Sure.
Depends on what I ask.
It depends on how deep you go.
I know you're building some classified stuff and whatever, so that we can't get into all of it. But let me ask you this: Do you have important goals for your team over the next year and a half? Is there any particular objectives that's our hill that we're trying to climb, and are they things you can speak to?
I have goals for what I want to accomplish with the company.
Okay.
And that's growth.
Okay.
So there's the operations side, but there's the business development side too.
Okay.
So
that's a big focus.
I for myself want to get better at the business development side and understand how we can grow as a company and
makes sense.
Get more business in the contracting world. You constantly have to be going after new business because
True.
It ends.
Nobody's knocking on your door just begging to give it to you.
Well, I do like to say that we get business because of doing good work.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I always try to encourage my teams to do is meet the mission. Whatever's been put in front of us to do is what we're here to do.
Mm-hmm.
So don't lose focus on that. You can bring new things to the table, but make sure that we're checking the box, and not because we're checking the box, but check it intelligently too.
Mm-hmm.
So if they need feedback, like you're going after the wrong thing, give them the feedback, but you might have to shut up and color.
Yeah.
So continuing that culture of delivering and delivering well is always at the forefront of my mind. Like if we're not here to serve customers, then why are we here?
Mm-hmm.
Not really some kind of lofty goal. I think it's just kind of a basic thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that we forget about the basics in so many things in life. Sometimes we just try to get fancy and we try to make things complicated and we overcomplicate the heck out of things.
Yeah.
So why can't we just focus on what's really important?
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's kind of my whole theme with things.
What is?
Being simple.
So when you think about those goals, you think about how that's going to play out over the next year or two. Mm-hmm. What do you think is most likely to get in your way? What are you going to do about it?
If people are confused it's very hard to move forward.
Hmm.
So I'm always looking for ways to clarify. Another theme in my life has always been teaching. I taught yoga for 14 years.
Okay.
I taught software classes. I taught agile stuff. I've always enjoyed teaching. And I try to bring elements of teaching into whatever I'm doing. So if I have an opportunity to help smooth out a process, I try to get involved and offer my services to, give feedback, give direction if it's within my realm. Or even if it's not within my realm sometimes. Hey, how about this?
Sounds like me coaching soccer. You want to be a soccer coach? What's offsides mean? I don't even know. I'm like a chapter ahead of these kids, Anyway. All right, last subject I gotta go into.
Okay.
Can we talk again a little bit about our experience working together?
Sure.
Because we had a lot of fun.
I was so grateful for so many things, Aaron, not just the candidates that you brought me, but you coached me along the way. I learned a ton from working with you.
Tell me what the most impactful thing is that you learned working with, and it wasn't just me. I know I did most of the interaction with you, but I had a team behind me too. So tell me what impacted you the most in working with us that you'll continue to take forward.
I really appreciated you taking the time to help me understand your process of how you vetted candidates and how you prepared for interviews and how you prepared the candidates. All of that process is important. And it's also something that I hadn't thought about in terms of it being a process, right? You just think, I need a candidate, go find a candidate, hire the candidate, move on. There's a lot of thoughtful vetting that needs to happen. And the way that I did it before was thoughtful for sure, but definitely didn't cover all of the aspects that you covered. So it helped fill a lot of gaps for me. And it also helped validate what I felt like I was doing well, why it was good.
Yeah, because you had a lot of good intuition, I think.
Oh, for sure.
You obviously made some good hires over the years because you had some great teams. So you knew some things that you did really well. Obviously.
Yeah.
That structured interview was a big impact for you.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And then building that content of that vetting process around your key decision criteria.
Yeah.
I recall us negotiating that, and it was mostly you negotiating internally. Like, is this more important than this? Or
But you asked me some important questions to help me figure that out.
Yeah.
Understanding what was the most important things to have in that. I knew I needed all these things, a whole laundry list of things that needed to be in that person's wheelhouse, but not all of them were equally important. The questions that probed deep to find out which ones were the most important helped me to hone my thought process.
Good.
And know the role even better. And one of the reasons I came to you was because I felt like I didn't know the role well enough to be able to accurately identify who would be the best candidate.
I find that to be true 70% of the time, 2/3 of the time.
Really?
Yeah, because when you're talking at a senior level leaders who are, either big budgets or big teams, whatever, big high level responsibility, there's a lot of different things that could create a large good outcome, right? And there's a lot of things obviously that could sink it, that could tank it. We probably know most of what those problems are. The trick is figuring out how to vet them. But the paths to win are so varied at the top, right? Like you could create a whole new business line or whatever, just because the latitude that we give to senior leaders, right?
Right.
And so whether it's people,
you got enough rope to hang yourself with.
That's right. And we give them a lot of responsibility. We give them a lot of authority. And so there's a lot of different paths to winning. So the lower level the job is, the more rote it is. The more specific that particular variable in the enterprise needs to be executed that particular way.
Right.
But if you take that the opposite direction at the highest level, that single person who's most in charge, or maybe that board, they can create a completely different business line if they want. You want to start selling stuffed animals tomorrow? Fine. You want to run a software services company the next day? You have the latitude to make that decision at that level of
Right.
breadth. So the paths to winning are so varied that I think it's common and it's normal. It's actually healthy to have a little bit of like starting with a question mark when it comes to hiring a senior leader. Like, what should this be? And it makes sense to answer that first. And then you start with mission, right? Like,
Right.
what's the most important objective that we're trying to accomplish? And what are the ways that we could do that? And then compare that to, the market of talent or the industry or whatever, and draw for yourself, I think, a loose sketch of what an ideal persona would look like, right?
Absolutely.
Somebody who brings this, and this strength, but also let's keep our eyes out for this, and this. And then you negotiate that key criteria or that winning route along the way. And I think we worked together in that way well.
Yeah.
There was an ongoing negotiation about what the key criteria were. And
Can I tag on to what you just said?
yeah, please.
What came to mind is that when you're looking for a person, two different people might have those core skills, but then everything else that they have could fill not only the role that you're looking for, but other little pieces here and there. And you've got to be able to
True.
put the pieces of the puzzle that are that bigger puzzle together across everything that you're doing, not just the role that you're filling, especially when you're looking for the leaders that are going to be reporting to you. So when we were looking for the one that we worked on together, that
Program
was
manager,
absolutely,
I think was
program manager was really critical. I mean, that's a very large contract and it's extremely busy, but he's also brought other people to the table that he knows. He's brought other opportunities to the table. Like, hey, would we want to go after this? Would we want to go after that?
Awesome.
How can I get involved in this? How can I get involved in that? And it's really exciting to see. But that's pieces of the puzzle now that I have to be able to put into. It's like having a jigsaw puzzle where somebody brings another box of pieces all of a sudden.
My experience running a recruitment firm and evolving into executive search after I've had some experience as an executive leader myself, it made sense because there's that part of the equation that's now thinking about how to grow the business with a person. It's such a fun problem for me. We don't bill ourselves as management consultants or whatever, but there's an element of that we do in any one of our senior level searches, because we really start with, why are you looking for this? Why do you have a gap? And why do you feel like you have a gap? Is it a person or a department that's missing? Right? And if we agree that it's a person, why? And what are the different things that person could bring to the table to make this a winning move? And it's always a number of things. So to your earlier point, I think most people, who are looking to hire a senior level person are starting with that question. What exactly should I be trying to hire? Who exactly should I be trying to hire? Because it's not just a job at that level. It's really somebody who could change the business.
That's really encouraging to
do
hear.
that, you need somebody who will get into your business and learn with you what the variables are that could make your business go to the next level, right? So,
see, I always learn from you, Aaron, because I never even thought about all this.
yeah, well, I do it for a living, so
You might be a little good at it.
I should have a few skills, right? All right, well, Britta, thank you very much for being on the show. This was really fun. Thanks for diving down the path about our experience working
Absolutely.
together.
I hope that was helpful.
It was perfect.